Rural life and society. In the pre-colonial period, the Indian economy was predominantly an agrarian economy. Industries existed, but they were also dependent on the agricultural sector. As the British were mainly interested in furthering the interests of their industrialists and traders, they followed such economic policies which suited and promoted their economic interests in India. The new patterns of land ownership and revenue policies that the British brought with them demolished the existing agrarian system in India and led to the deterioration of villagers' condition. Here we will focus on the economic policies imposed by the British and their impact on Indian peasantry and agriculture. Rural life in Mughal times. During the Mughal period, there were three types of land. The land given to Mansabdars as jagir was cultivated and its produce was sold to get the income for the Mansabdar. The khalisa land was owned by the emperor and the cultivators were paid 1/3 of the produce as tax. The inam lands were tax-free, charitable lands given to the mosques, temples, etc. The weakened central government after the decline of Mughal Empire could not collect taxes efficiently. So, the government started Ijara farming. Here, tax collectors or Ijara farmers were appointed as agents to collect tax and they kept 1/10 of collected money. So, they were tempted to exploit the peasants because the more they collected, the more they kept for themselves. Zamindars during the Mughal period came to denote all those who collected rent and did not own village land. In this sense, zamindars were intermediaries between the government and the peasants. Villages were self-sufficient units. Each village had a person called Mandal or chief ryot who acted on behalf of the zamindar for collecting land revenue. Revenue collection in East India Company. After the Battle of Buxar, the company started to collect the land revenue in Bengal. As Diwan, the company became the chief financial administrator of the territory under its control. Now, it had to think of administering the land and organizing its revenue resources. This had to be done in a way that could yield enough revenue to meet the growing expenses of the company. The company needed regular income to build an army, train it and expand it for conquering more places in India. The effort of the company was to increase the revenue as much as it could and buy fine cotton and silk cloth as cheaply as possible. Before 1865, the company had purchased goods in India by importing gold and silver from Britain. Now, the revenue collected in Bengal could finance the purchase of goods for export. Warren Hastings became the first Governor-General of India. He auctioned the right to collect revenue to the highest bidder for a period of 5 years. This system was known as Ijaradari system. It increased the misery of peasants as the bidding was done by rich merchants who were merely interested in collecting maximum revenue without taking into consideration the productivity of land. As auction of land was periodical, the new zamindars took no interest in the improvement of agricultural land. As a result, nobody was benefited. The company did not get expected income. The zamindars felt insecure and peasants were oppressed. Permanent settlement. Lord Cornwallis, who became the Governor-General in 1786, introduced the permanent settlement in Bengal and Bihar and later in Odisha. He wanted to increase the revenue of the company and thus decided to fix the land revenue to be collected. By the terms of the settlement, the Rajas and Talukdars were recognized as zamindars. They were asked to collect rent from the peasants and pay revenue to the company. The amount to be paid was fixed permanently, that is, it could not be increased ever in future. Thus, zamindar was made a landlord of the entire land from which till now he had only collected taxes. The cultivator now became his tenant and lost his rights. It was felt that this would ensure a regular flow of revenue in the company's treasury and on the other hand, encourage the zamindars to invest in improving the land. As revenue demands could not be increased, the zamindars would benefit from increased production from the land. Under this system, 90% of the revenue collected by the zamindar went to the company. 10% was kept by the zamindar. Lord Cornwallis made this settlement permanent by regulation in 1793. It meant that the company was assured of financial security, that is, a regular supply of income even in case of bad harvest. It also increased British income as the rate of revenue was high. As zamindars were made the owners of land, this class became loyal to British. But the immediate effect of permanent settlement on zamindars was disastrous. Many of them could not realize land revenue from the peasants and consequently could not pay the money to the government in time. Thus, they had no choice but to sell or mortgage part of their land to enable them to pay the revenue. The cultivators, on the other hand, were oppressed and had no rights to the land. They were left at the mercy of zamindars. As revenue was rigidly collected, the peasants were forced to borrow money from the moneylenders and landlords. When they failed to repay money, their mortgaged land was confiscated. They had to work as landless labor or as begar, which made their lives utterly miserable. Thus, permanent settlement led to the deterioration of agriculture and impoverishment of the peasantry.